Nice.
Yeah.
It does feel like hard work is not in any way correlated to results anymore.
Yeah.
Do you find yourself still working hard? And if so, what is your eventual hopeful payoff? Like, what is the thing that's going to give you security that your effort was worth it? Is it the house and the car and the kids? Is that?
Well, it's pretty interesting question for me right now because I feel like I did have a lot of that, at least in my like late 20s and early 30s. And I kind of gave it all up a few years ago. And like I quit my job, I sold my car, and I moved to Taiwan for a year.
Wow.
And I think I'm still like figuring out like what that next like chapter that I want to like kind of contribute, for hopefully the rest of my life in some regard. But yeah, like I would say that like I've worked pretty hard also in the last couple of years. So I've been pursuing my own software companies and entrepreneurial, startups and stuff. But yeah, and it hasn't paid out, but I still, I think, find meaning in like the work that I am doing, even if it's not necessarily bringing a financial return yet. Cause that was like very much what my focus was in my 20s. It was like, work hard and, move up the career ladder and, make money and, get the house, get the car and stuff like that. So
when you cast off, when you went over to Taiwan, you shed a lot of pieces that might be thought of as your identity.
Mm-hmm.
What did it feel like to be so relieved of everything that you were? All your routines are what make you who you are in a sense.
Yeah.
What was it like to just let go of everything?
Honestly, it felt like I got to be a kid again, kind of in a new environment. And I guess this is why some people travel, or why some people find, travel fulfilling, but, you really don't have any of this, attachment to any identities when you go abroad, because like, you're just like a rando. No one knows who you are. And like, I was working in video games for many years. So, it was sort of like stepping outside of that bubble too. It's like, oh, like people don't know these companies that I worked at or the games that I worked on. And so it's like, yeah, it's really just a way to have a fresh start. And then also just, I guess, reconnect with things that I enjoyed as a kid. I kind of I took soccer like pretty seriously again, as one can in their early 30s. I joined like an amateur club and, went from like being on the outside to kind of going into like the operations, like volunteer operations staff in a matter of months, and, starting for them and taking training like pretty seriously. I also got back into chess, which I'm still like into like this day and age. I was playing a little bit before I came here. And then also just, getting to try new things. I studied Chinese for a couple of months, and that was really great. And then, yeah, just getting to explore a new part of the world too.
When you were rediscovering these things, would you say you were happier?
I would say so. Yeah, absolutely. Because I think that I kind of could like return to maybe that place in life where I didn't feel like I'd have to like, I could just enjoy the fun of it. I wasn't like trying to compete for status or prestige. I mean, I know I just mentioned like, oh, I went from, like outside to being inside of like this soccer team, like the inner circle pretty quickly. But I think that was just more, I wasn't trying to like strive for that. It was just more like, oh, I want to contribute to this and I enjoy it. It's passion. Yeah.
So why do you think it's hard to recapture that happiness? Why do you have to escape to get it? Because these things don't seem technically inaccessible, soccer and chess and community. Why did it take traveling across the world and relinquishing everything for you to return to a sense of play?
I think it was because I probably wasn't like taking the time to kind of carve that out for myself. I guess there's like kind of a intentionality around it that's important, but I think when you introduce intentionality as well, you kind of generate a sense of like an expectation on like the return as well. So like, I was playing on a soccer team with a bunch of coworkers, and I was, I'd been on this team for a few years, but I felt like some of the people had changed around, and it just wasn't like quite the same. Like I wasn't really enjoying it as much as I was pre-COVID, but that also might have had to do with some injuries that I was having. But to go back to like why I wanted to take traveling across the world, I feel like it was also just like kind of cultivating like a different version of myself that I wanted. And so in some ways, I guess you could like intentionally like kind of deconstruct some of those things, but Yeah, perhaps it's also just easier sometimes to just, start new.
Does it feel like a rebirth?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think also like I was in LA during this time, and when I moved there in my 20s, I told myself like I was not going to like be here like for a long time. I always knew that like it was a little bit too crazy and like chaotic and too many people, too crowded, too much traffic. It also can get quite hot like during the summer.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of told myself that like, you're young, you're single, you don't have any responsibilities, like go enjoy the city. And then, snap of your fingers and the 20s are gone and it's COVID and now it's like early 30s and it's like, well, gee, that like I set out to do and I did what I intended to do, but I guess it was sort of like I didn't really have a good idea of what I wanted to come next. And I think that, yeah, jumping ship, so to speak, and just like seeing what the world might offer was a way to kind of reset that.
It seems like the same thing, but in a different costume. So in both scenarios, you jumped into something where you knew there was some sort of potential and that you trusted yourself to maybe find it when you got there. But LA didn't quite work so much, maybe for extraneous reasons, COVID and a bunch of things. But going across the world felt like it was working a lot better. Are you still comfortable with that sort of chaos? I mean, you're doing entrepreneurship right now. It seems as though you're very capable of trusting yourself to figure things out as you go.
Yeah, and I think that betting on yourself is hard. There's a quote I'm paraphrasing from the Bhagavad Gita, which is one of the, I guess, endeavors I've learned about this inside decided to make a big shift. But basically it's saying like if you pursue your life's mission imperfectly, it's infinitely better than if you pursue someone else's life's mission perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
So as far as like starting over, like, yeah, I am betting on myself, and it is pretty chaotic, and there's a lack of structure at times. And, I do kind of like, I think maybe my interest is growing and having a little bit more structure again as well. I've been low key looking at jobs again. But I'm also still kind of like working hard to at least have something that is like personally fulfilling as well, that hopefully will one day pay the bills as well.
Because as you're talking about fulfillment, tell me about the task or the challenge or just the engagement that you feel gives you the best sense of fulfillment that you were uniquely enabled to tackle.
Yeah. I think what jumps out for me is like connection. I see myself as someone who is like, not uniquely capable, but like naturally capable of bringing people together. And also being able to like have perspective, I think, on different, or having like holding different perspectives as well. So, like I have this like probably unusual context with like Taiwan and the geopolitical situation there.
Mm-hmm.
I like grew up speaking Spanish in school, even though I'm a complete gringo. So I just feel like there's in many ways like and then even in my professional career, I worked in quality assurance. I worked as like the data guy in the marketing department. So I got a lot of like insight into like how marketing works and how marketers think. And then I was also like an engineer. So I just feel like I have like a very broad set of skills and perspectives. And so I would say that like, yeah, I think trying to help people connect with one another, potentially also like just holding different perspectives and ideas that might even be conflicting with one another, I think is something that I feel like I'm naturally capable at it. I'm not trying to say that I'm like good at it or anything.
Know your skills for sure. I think it's important to recognize your own strengths. I do think though that psychology is inherently the science of communication. And when you're talking about being a data guy in the marketing department, you were looking at the metrics and science of communication. Is there anything cool you picked up there?
I think that if I could say one thing, it would be that I think that people have like an intuitive understanding of like why something is being made. And if it's like, oh, we're trying to get them to like, we're trying to get you like convert or buy something or download something. Like there are people that are going to like see that and be like, okay, well, whatever, I'll just buy anyway. There are also people that I think will kind of like be a little bit turned off by that. And so I think where the magic really happens is when you can actually get people to say, hey, we're going to deliver a really awesome experience for you. And if we're giving you ways to like, invest in that experience yourself and also like help us deliver that for you, like then I think there's real meaning behind whatever marketing efforts you're doing. And I think that sometimes people might lose sight of that. I mean, I know that people will always say, oh, like we're not trying to like, grab money from people, but like, I guess that some things are just more blatant than others.
Yeah.
And even still, like, I think that there's kind of if the intentionality is not on trying to profit off of someone, I think that you actually can still get like quite good returns on that, even if like profit is not the direct, motivation for doing a certain action. There's actually a book about this. It's called Obliquity by John Kay. He's a English economist or something, but his whole book is about how sometimes our goals are best achieved indirectly, which is, I think, kind of a good like jumping off point for people.
So when you're doing honest communication, you're advertising, obviously, like there has to be a transaction of some sort. You want it to be mutually beneficial. Maybe you're not even yourself indirectly saying like, I want your money, but I'll give you this. How have these principles found their way into your own entrepreneurship?
Yeah. So, one of the things that I'm trying to do right now is that like, especially, this is also like my background. I work mostly in like free to play games. So it's like, it's like, okay, well, we have to make money some way. So it might be through microtransactions or like a freemium model. And so, one of the apps that I'm working on now, it's like, there's a cosmetic, option that you can buy. It's completely optional. It doesn't affect any functionality in the app at all. But like, yeah, you get to like kind of customize the app experience in the way that you might want. I think it looks cooler and stuff. And also you can customize your phone a little bit outside of the app as well. And so, that's just an example of like where, still I'd have to, run the numbers, eventually to say like, okay, like, is this model actually like sustainable for the business? If it's not, then maybe we have to try something else. But that's at least where I'm like trying to start from, and just, giving people the optionality of like saying, hey, if you don't want to throw any money towards us, like that's fine. But if you do want to, like, we'd really appreciate it. Like, it's a free app, and like, here's something that you'd get by supporting it.
It does. It's absolutely true that whatever way you're interacting with the product, you're sort of embodying like an identity in a way. So if you can change the costume of it, change the surroundings of it, you experience it in a different way. So I imagine you have to go into the mind of how people are interacting with your product, see how they might maybe want to improve it or adapt it or modify it, and then let that lead the changes you're making, right?
Yeah, absolutely. As you can design and engineer as much as you want, but as soon as you release something and you get data from your customer, whether that's like actual usage metrics, or you're getting like feedback or reviews, like it behooves you to operate based on that, with a grain of salt also, because there's always a little bit of an art to like how much you want to lean into that, because sometimes, again, going back to like sometimes your goals are best achieved indirectly. Like a customer might think, oh, like I don't like this feature, but it might be that the way that it's presented, it's not clear what the experience is. And so if you don't understand something, or you push a button expecting one thing and it doesn't do it, then you're going to have, probably not a great time, not a great review. But if you can understand like, oh, actually, I see that they're like, they actually do want to use this, but it's not clear. And so I actually have to change like the instructions of how to use it. Then you end up with hopefully something that the customer enjoys more. You
get so far in the box, you forget that other people have different intuitions because they have different preconcepts.
Yes. Yeah.
You mentioned that this freemium model, you say people can pay for it if they want to, they don't have to. And this is something I see in entrepreneurship a lot, is that there's almost an inclination to make yourself small, because there's a little bit of reluctance to just claim value and then ask for money for that. Is that happening with you at all?
I think that part of it is my background. Like part of it is like just like my professional background, seeing what works. But in terms of like trying to like charge people up front for something, I think that there are, I don't want to go into the details of like the app specifics, but like there are competitors that are doing this. And my business partners and I, we look at this and we think that like it's kind of, there's different morals at play there. And I think that also if people really do enjoy the app or whatever you're building for them, like they're going to want to support it, versus like, charging someone upfront to pay for it. But no, I do see the other side of things though, where it's like people do pay upfront, and I think that they are financially successful, but I feel like there's a little bit of a larger risk in the long run, that like eventually it becomes more about extracting value out of people versus like actually providing a service. And so Like my goals for like the app that I'm currently working on is that, reaches 1 million people and it makes just enough money for me to like cover my bills in San Francisco. Like I'd be super happy with that.
Yeah.
I don't need it to like, I'm not trying to be a multimillionaire or whatever off of like, trying to extract value out of people. But,
Yeah.
I think also, people that have different mindsets are coming from different, intentions and different, you said something earlier, like pre-concept or something before. So, I don't think that it's either right or wrong. It's just that it's just like what I feel like is like, I think what's more aligned with what feels good to me. But then again, if I do need to have, a lot of income suddenly, then I might want to like go back into looking at a corporate job.
It does seem as though a man who is more interested in communication is more going to create something that establishes human trust and human connection as the basis of value transaction. So it makes perfect sense that it's much more fulfilling to just trust that people will enjoy your product and then support you because of it.
Yeah.
Are you a fan of anybody in that way? Do you have anybody that you don't have to support but you do?
Oh,
in the creative space?
I would say so. There's a few Substacks that I think I subscribe to, and I probably don't read a lot of them, to be honest. I don't have a ton of time, but I think that, like, for example, like the idea of Substack, I think it's a really awesome way for people to, make income through writing. It pays the bill for some people. For some people, it's like their full-time job. So I'd say that's one way that I would do it. I used to also, like when I was working in video games, I would also like subscribe to Twitch streams a lot, I don't think I do that very much. I might still have like a subscription actually to like the Washington Post, which is like my hometown newspaper of all places. But I have to check on that.
So when you do find something like that, a Substack or a Twitch streamer, what is it that you're getting from it that makes paying the $5 and that's you see the $5 leave your bank account, you're not even reading the material, you're not watching the people stream, but you're still okay with it. What are you getting from that connection?
I think it's just, I probably at some point read some content or watched some content that I just really resonated with me. And I think it's also kind of seeing where people are and what they're doing, and wanting to support that because, in some ways, like they might be working on something that's like, deeply true and aligned with themselves. And, I guess there's some recognition in that. But I think mostly at the end of the day, like it's kind of just a feeling, and certainly there's a lot of, Substacks I've come across that I don't support, or Twitch streamers that I don't, support. Not to like change the subject, but I guess the flip question is like, well, why don't you, why don't I put money towards those that why do I not put money towards some creatives in that space? So, I'm not sure, like maybe I haven't had a peak connection with their content. And again, it's not to saying that I never will. It's just that like, if I see, if someone puts out 10 Substack articles a month and there's 2 that are real hits for me and I happen to see one of them, then maybe it'll work. But, I could come across someone who is, writing really good content and either I read something that doesn't really land for me or I just don't see the ones that do. So if I can veer off and say, I guess it's maybe a bit of a crapshoot sometimes.
Yeah.
Also,
when I subscribe to some things, it will occasionally have to do with a phase of my identity. So I was in bench science for a while, and I subscribed to a Substack because I saw myself as a bench scientist that was exploring the things that they talked about. And then I gravitated out of that, and I gravitated away from the Substack. And we talked a little bit about rebirth, about phases of self. And I think that when people resonate with creators in some way, they're either nostalgic for something that they used to be, they're seeing a mirror towards something that they are, or they're idolizing something that they want to be. Have you found that to be true for any of your creators?
I think that for a lot of them, I'm kind of treating it as like, well, it depends on the platform. But there are some things that I would say are just kind of like finding me at like the right stage of my growth for some things. But I also would say that there are some things that I don't want to say stuck in, but like for example, like, sometimes I'll actually, I do get recommended a lot of like chess shorts and stuff. And the thing is, like, I still play it, a lot, but I also feel like I am not like intentionally trying to get better at chess. So it's probably like not very relevant content for me. Versus like, I don't know if it's correct to call him a content creator, but spiritual figurehead by the name of Ram Dass. Like somehow his content has come into my life recently, and it's been like, oh, this is actually like very interesting for me of where I am like spiritually and kind of like where I'm I guess, exploring myself and consciousness. So that's an extent of like, I just feel like this is like where I need to like, where I want to learn, where I'm naturally drawn to learn more. But I definitely think that like, 2 years ago, I probably wasn't ready to consume this particular person's content or whatever.
One of my favorite concepts I've ever heard is that you can walk into a bookstore and the right book will find you at the right time. Like the title will jump out. And I found it true in my life 3 or 4 times at least. What is it about Ram Dass that's finding you right now?
Yeah. So, I think that he had an established career. And then I think at the age of like 31 or 32, he was put on a different path, let's just say. So for those of people who aren't familiar, he was a Stanford trained Harvard psychologist, like top of his field, like had everything, decided to do experiments with psychedelics in the 60s and then promptly got kicked out of Harvard, went to India, became a monk, and learned a lot about meditation and spirituality and, different types of religion, I would say also. So in some ways, he talks a lot about like how a lot of our lives are spent in service of like masks, or he calls them spacesuits sometimes. So it's like, oh, like you're born with a spacesuit, and then you're taught to kind of don a different spacesuit. This might be your profession or whatever. But at the end of the day, the spacesuit is not really you. I mean, you can wear it for a while. You might get tired of it. You might have other possible suits to come into your life that you wear. So I think that what I particularly like about his delivery also is that he can go around between like, I guess, spiritual teachings, but also kind of bring like, an intellectual academic type of focus, which I guess just I enjoy as well. And then also I think he's kind of a bridge. I mean, I talked about being like, connection and myself being able to hold different perspectives. So, this guy was a psychologist. I think religious wise, he's like grew up Jewish, kind of Jewish atheist. And now he's like, Hindu-ish, Buddhist-ish.
He's Buddhist. I like that.
Buddhist, yeah. And then also in his book that I'm reading now, it's called Paths to God. He also mentions like Christ and Muhammad kind of offhand about like, they said this, or these are, they were at this stage of enlightenment or whatever. So yeah, it's kind of a smorgasbord of stuff. And maybe that's the most resonant piece of it, that I feel like a smorgasbord at times.
Yeah, I can imagine. And I'm personally a big Alan Watts guy, so maybe we put him in a celebrity death match or something with the spiritual leaders. But really, their content is a lot of things that are simple but told in really accessible ways, but things we need to be reminded of because we get so caught up in the water that just flows with us. We never get a moment to just catch our breath and remember the simple things. But what I am curious about is when you're talking about spacesuits, a lot of that is constraint of interaction. So you're interacting in the world has a form, and you adjust your form to match with it, communicate with it. Have you had many interactions with no spacesuit?
I am struggling to come up with an answer, so I'm going to default to saying no. I haven't had many interactions without a spacesuit. Even today, I was thinking like, oh, I should get out of like my shorts and t-shirt that I'm walking around in the house with and put on like nicer pants and a turtleneck and maybe a nice jacket for this interview. So that's definitely a spacesuit that I'm putting on for this. I would say that interactions outside of a spacesuit, I guess, are fairly far and few between, just because like I feel like most of the experiences you might have without a spacesuit is like kind of like with yourself in some ways, like introspection, kind of like going off into a world where no one knows you, you don't know anyone, like you can kind of just like, you don't really have to think about like which hat or which spacesuit am I wearing right now. So maybe for me, going to Taiwan was, an example of that, where kind of rebirth or reinvent yourself. But even then, it's only for like a moment, I guess, because then eventually you're like, okay, well now I'm a student of Chinese, and I, help volunteer and run this soccer team. I also haven't mentioned yet, but I also started a grad school program in Taiwan. So like, okay, now I'm a graduate student, great question.
That's how I felt with the Substacks. If someone were to come to you and say, I would love to interact with you with no spacesuit, just completely unfiltered, is it possible, do you think? Do you think it's even possible to interact with something else that has substance and form and identity without assembling some sort of substance, form, identity to match it?
I think so. Yeah, but it's like I think there's very few people that do it. And I think this is where some of the spiritual figures of our times come in, because in some ways it's like there is no they're somewhat merged with the larger consciousness or the universe or whatever higher power you believe in. So like it is possible, but I think for most people it takes. I mean, what does it take? It's like, well, there's a lot of schools of thought on what it takes.
Mm-hmm. So you're a man who's experienced it a little bit. I mean, you shed a lot of identity and you reinvented yourself and found more foundational states of joy. Do you think you can recreate that in just like a micro interaction level? Do you think it's possible to engage with people in a natural, non-assembled way, just day to day?
I think so. Yeah. I think that there's one of the ways that you might be able to do it is to just kind of interact with someone, but without any like attachment to what the outcome might be. Which again, there's examples that I can point to, I was climbing Mount Whitney with my dad a couple years ago, and we found a knife that had been left behind, and so I was asking around for people like, hey, did you drop a knife, whatever, and we came across a guy who. I'm going to tell the story, but then I've already realized oh wait, I think I'm falling into a trap. But anyway, this other hiker was like, oh, actually, it's not mine, but I actually lost my knife a few days ago, and so I kind of felt like I was just like, I gave him the knife even though it wasn't his, but it still felt like it was like the right thing to do, because I was like, oh, like I have no use of this knife. Mm-hmm. This person, this other part of me does, and so I felt like that was just a way of like transferring something material to someone else without any I didn't have any attachment to the knife. I think I do have some attachment to the story as I bring this up to demonstrate something. But I remember in the moment I was pretty zen about it. I was like, oh, it's a nice knife, but it sounds like you need it, so here you go. But yeah, I think you can truly see a person.
It sounds like a little bit what might have been happening, and obviously I'm projecting on your story here, but what I'm getting a sense of is that you experienced non-judgment, that there was this pretty obvious sensation of somebody doing something that's maybe a little bit morally gray, claiming ownership of value of something that pretty blatantly probably wasn't theirs, but that you recognized in yourself that you had no attachment to the thing, no attachment to the judgment of the individual, and were just willing to concede that he demonstrated communication of desire, and you were just willing to fulfill it, without any sort of tumultuousness happening inside of you. That feels very zen. Is that anything close?
Yeah, I would say so. And the thought did occur to me oh, well, he might have just been saying that, but I mean, I also thought, well, this guy's, after the fact, I look back and he was actually hiking the John Muir Trail. So it was he was not a day hiker for this.
He needed a knife.
He needed a knife. He was I think it's where the trail ends, but it was this guy had a huge backpack on. But no, you're absolutely right though, that there was this need that I was kind of okay, well, I don't, even if your intentions are just seeking material gain, I don't really care if you get it or not. I just feel like this is something that I can, it's kind of taking it at face value, I guess.
That feels like real connection, because you're seeing somebody exactly as they are without having to impress anything on them. You're just acknowledging. Yeah. And through acknowledging of their actual state, you're able to accept their actual state.
Yeah.
Does that happen frequently for you? It sounds like you're a connector, so maybe this is something that's you're more attuned to?
I had to pull this example out from 2 years ago. So, maybe there's other... Actually, I could say, another example might be just last night, I was actually at a talk on the history and philosophy of yoga, and I noticed that the guy next to me got up and left his wallet. So I ran downstairs and found him. But yeah, I think it wasn't there was just not a lot of thought behind it in some ways. It wasn't what would I get if I did this thing? It was more just oh, I wonder if I can find him. And sure enough, he was outside, his Uber was about to pull up. So I was just so.
Does it feel natural to operate in this way?
Yeah, I think so. It just feels very I don't know what the right word is, but it just seems like just doing the right thing and not thinking about it too much. Yeah, I feel like I'm just kind of trailing off.
Yeah, no, please, yeah. So. As a closer, though, it does feel as though you are settling into a sense of purpose, maybe with some pivots, and you're coming into it with a little bit of, a lot of it, of experience about spirituality and about culture and about how you offer value to the world. Mm-hmm. And I'd just kind of love to hear about what the next steps might be for you.
Yeah. I have to do. I feel like there's a little bit more. I'm finding value in the apps that I'm developing, even if there aren't financial return yet. But I also just see that like I do need to, I think, head back for a more stable career for other things that I want in my life. I think also like my goals for this year have just been like keep living in San Francisco as well. I truly feel like aligned with the city. Just like, connection and it just, like there's trash cans written here in 3 languages, and it just feels like there's this incredible like juxtaposition of like, stunning views and good weather, but it's also like you might have like incredible pinnacle tech influence and impact, and you also have parts of the city that are on very hard times. Mm-hmm. And so I absolutely love San Francisco. So I feel very happy, but also just very like purposeful here. And then, I would say that just, continuing to work on what I've been working on. And then, eventually it's just continuing to live in San Francisco. And there's just so much more also that I feel like this city can offer me, and hopefully ways that I can contribute to the city back.
Yeah. So. San Francisco feels a lot to me like it's a place that's very grounded and tangible, but also very optimistic and very futuristic. Yeah. And so I like to personally say that I think it's the city that connects the ground to the sky.
I love that.